Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. And boy, oh boy, did I even need to hear this week's episode. Oh my goodness. This week, I'm joined by Rachel Collins. She is talking focus, flow, and productivity, specifically amplifying creative productivity through mindfulness. As a mindfulness teacher, meditation teacher, you would think that this is something that I would be good at too. However, I am not the most productive human there ever has been. I'm okay, but I have phases where I overwhelm myself and things just do not get done. And then I have to kind of get to the point of frustration within myself and then start to backtrack and start to get things done and kind of strategize things a bit more. It's just the pattern that I have. It's something that I'm working on myself. I'm not a perfect human. So to hear once again these tips and tricks that Rachel shares in this episode were really helpful for me while I was editing it, and I'm sure it will be so helpful for so many of you, because I know productivity is something that a lot of us beat ourselves up about, and we needn't. We just need to be a little bit more strategic about it. So Rachel Collins, my guest this week, is a creative writer and artist with over 20 years experience crafting mandala art as a meditative practice. Balancing her passion for creativity with a busy professional life, she developed the Focus Flow Formula, a mindful productivity system designed to help people prioritize what truly matters to them. This system allowed her to carve out time for her passion projects, including authoring books, creating art, and teaching and coaching others how to live with greater purpose, passion, and joy. Rachel's mission is to inspire others to overcome overwhelm. Hello, overwhelm central. And reconnect with their creative pursuits through intentional planning and mindful living. So, as I said, this is stuff that I'm sure a lot of you guys will find extremely helpful. So let's go into it. Rachel Collins, a massive warm welcome to Maverick Mind, the podcast. Rachel, a massive warm welcome to Maverick Mind. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. I appreciate the work you're doing, and it's great to have an opportunity to meet with your audience as well.
Yeah, just to kind of give everyone an idea of, I suppose, your creative path. Sometimes that can be a really long, twisty, turny story to tell people. I know mine is for sure. But can you remember, like from childhood, were you always interested within art or?
I always felt really good about it. So it was something I loved to do. It was never something I imagined I could earn a living with, right? And so when I think back to, moments that really stood out where I was really proud, I remember in grade one, I had drawn like, these hills and just all the feedback and just how felt good that felt like to create something. The other piece I'd say was, writing. So from a very early age, I love to write. And when I think about those moments that just really stood out for me of feeling that I had created something that I loved. The first one was like a story in grade four. And, that moment stays with you. And so while I have always dabbled in the arts, it's only really recently that I've seen this as a viable career that brings my passions and my joys and my ability to life. And so I think there's a distinction between kind of loving something and then seeing yourself doing that for your living, right? And that's a really new development for me, and I'm very excited to go down this path.
For sure. Can you remember like the time in your life, or maybe it might have been a split moment where you felt that
Mhm.
kind of pulling to actually, I'm going to make a career out of this thing?
Yeah, I think what's happened is actually I've been pulled all along to do that, and then I've been resisting it. And so
Ah.
it's like always there, it's always bubbling under the surface, but it's being willing to say yes to it, right? And that's the hard part, right? Like that's where this feeling of risk comes in, or this moment of taking a leap of faith, right? Because it's if I look at the things that have given me satisfaction, that have given me joy, they always evolve around the arts, right? So whether it's visual art or whether it's writing, those are the moments where I feel authentic. Those are the moments where I feel like I have a gift that I'm giving to the world in some way, right? And being able to like stand in yourself and go, okay, this matters, right? This is something that actually really matters, right? Is where I think it's really tough for myself and probably for other people as well, right? Just to step into that power.
Absolutely. I think there's so many reasons that we do resist that inner voice saying, like, you should be doing this, or, you can actually do this with your life, because there's so much. I talk often on this show about the narrative and the noise in society throughout like loads of years that has told us that it's going to be impossible for you to make a living from this, that being an artist is not a quote unquote real job, that artists are only ever rich after they die. If you're not an artist, maybe it's the likelihood that you're going to get on the big stage. Do you know the likelihood that you're going to do this? Do you know how many businesses fell within the first year? And there's so much fear that gets projected onto us, and we're such
Mhm.
sensitive beings, and we're kind of like
Mhm.
sponges. We take on a lot of things, which is what makes us creative, because we kind of take on the information and somehow it bubbles out into something amazing and beautiful one day. But
Mhm.
sometimes we can also take on that noise and take on other people's fears and narratives, and it some of us, we never really get over that. But then there is sometimes the voice gets so loud that it's like, actually, do you know what, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Again, were you like working a normal job and then you decided to, I call it like the pirate life, like going out on the pirate ship on my own and do my own thing?
Yeah, for sure. So I am still working like in my professional career. And what I've been doing on the side is publishing. And so I have my first book out, which is Insights and Inspirations, and it's 300 journal prompts for cultivating joy, mindfulness, and gratitude. I'm currently writing my next book, which is all called the Focus Flow Formula. And so it's all about how we take that creative energy and how we find a way to really, focus in on what it is that we want to do and bring our gifts to life, right? And so those are kind of my passion projects that I'm doing while I'm doing a full-time job. I will say I also do mandala art. And so for mandala art is something that I look at as a way of really kind of grounding myself in mindfulness so that I have like the energy to like give to these other projects so I can do things like the full-time job and writing on the side because I have this beautiful moment for myself of just really calm focus that kind of comes out in the form of art. And so that is something I've also done some workshops around and things like that because I've been doing it for so many years. But it's like I find it's not something I'm doing commercially. Like I'm doing it for the joy of it, right? And I think that that's like for me, that's just a really important piece is like being able to do something for the joy and the pleasure of doing it, and then having a way to share that as a gift, right? And so it's a really fine balance, right? Because you want to be able to make a living through your creativity but at the same time, you don't want to stifle that creativity by focusing all of it into kind of, things that would be commercial ventures. And so what I find for myself is like, if I can make this not just about my gifts, but about helping other people also recognize their gifts, identifying what it is they truly value and how they want to show up in the world, and then giving them the structure to help make that happen, right? That it becomes more of a shared journey where we're like lifting each other up together, like that community of support within that structure. And so it's just all these things are coming together in really beautiful ways where I feel like the skills that I've gained professionally, right, around facilitation, around presentations, all of that stuff really allows me to kind of, bring a different lens to the creative work that I'm doing. And so it comes together, but just in really unique ways.
Yeah, well, I think that's often the case. I don't want to say always the case, but it's often the
Mhm.
case because even if I find we've had that voice telling us that we should be doing the art thing for many, many years or pursuing our passion for many, many years, there's always a right time when you do it. I mean, when you do it, it's like there's always like that came to me at the right time because I had all of this other stuff that then influenced it over time. You know, I can now channel it this way. And now my vision for what I want to do is so clear.
Yes.
We can really resist like having a quote unquote real job as well on the side. And I think it's been glamorized a lot to, quit your job, do what you want to do. And I tell you, I did that more or less. And as you say, it drove me to burnout because you put so much pressure on that thing that you love the most. And then it becomes something, as you say, that you don't really enjoy anymore. And I think you have to kind of find a way to do both. I mean, you can quit your job and follow what you do, but then you have to kind of find a way to keep making it fun, to keep stay in love with it. And for some, it'll be very different for everyone. Some people will feel more drawn to taking that route, and some people will feel more drawn to doing maybe something like you've done. And I don't think there's any right or wrong to either way. It's what feels right for you. And as I said, your journey can kind of feed into then what you're doing. And now you're doing something that I think is so needed within the creative space. And that is kind of guiding people to be more mindful and productive.
Hmm.
Um, because yeah, I mean, I've taught yoga and meditation teacher as well as doing creative things for like 13 years now. And mindfulness has really impacted, and yoga philosophy as well has really impacted my creative process, and it's really amplified everything for me. So I'd really love to know, like, how did you discover mindfulness? Did you find it the mandalas first, or did you find mindfulness first?
Yeah, so the mandalas came first for me. Like I've been doing those for many, many years, and I didn't have the language around mindfulness when I was first doing it to be able to describe the experience. But these absolute focus and calm and peace, this present moment awareness of just being fully in that moment. That is what I feel when I do mandalas, right? And time just flows, right? Time just disappears. And so many years later, I'd say about 10 years back at this point, is when I had joined a mindfulness group and was exposed to like the work of John Kabat-Zinn. And it gave me the language to describe that experience that I would have when I was doing art, right? And also a bit more of a structure, right, around how to think about that. And so what I love about mindfulness is it definitely that present moment awareness, right? Like now is what we have. Stop worrying about the past or, worrying about the future, right? Like truly being present here in this moment. The body mind connection, I think, is a really important part of that as well. And so, being able to, calm your nervous system, being able to breathe mindfully, doing a body awareness scan, all these different activities that can kind of ground us here now in this moment. And I think when you're doing creative work, being able to like be fully present that way is absolutely a gift, right? It's something that just sets you free because you're no longer thinking about the past or worrying about the future. You're just fully here in this moment. And I think that's a skill that we can all cultivate, and I continue to learn and cultivate, right? I haven't got it 100% nailed, but I have techniques now where I can just, if I'm starting to worry, I'm starting to stress, I can pause and I can reconnect. And I just love that. And so they came to me separately, but they integrate really well together. The other piece of it, I'd say, is like I'm a very action-oriented person, right? I want to produce things, I want to create things. And I have these passion projects I'm working on. And I've been doing this, while working full time. And I'm a mother and I have all these responsibilities. And so I think the kind of mindfulness piece of it really comes together nicely with productivity because what it does is it allows me to say, you know what? I need to get in tune with my heart. I need to get in tune with what really matters to me so that I'm not trying to do it all. So I can just focus in on one or two things that really matter in this moment for this duration of time and be fully present in doing those. And so it doesn't necessarily change what I do, right? But it changes how I show up and what I'm doing, right? It allows me to have more joy in that moment. So instead of like, this judgmental feeling of, oh, well, I should be doing these other 100 things, right? Or these other 10 things, I can just be fully there enjoying that moment. And so I think that is, it actually allows me to create more output as well, like produce more, do more, because when I'm there, I'm focused on there, right? I'm not having these kind of like threads like pulling me in other directions. I'm just fully present. And so if I sit down to write, right, and I've given myself half an hour to write, and that is my time, like that is sacred time, right? That is something that won't get interrupted because of this whole mindfulness that has gone into making that choice. And so, like that action, that activity in the world, if you compare the mindfulness and pair that up with what it is you want to do and how you want to be, I just find incredible power in that. And just love that approach. So works really well for me, and now I'm sharing it with other people as well.
Yeah, I love that. And as I say, I think it's so needed because so many of us, like myself included, hello, my name's Ellie. I've totally struggled with productivity myself, even though I'm a meditation teacher. And I think it's because we can, as you say, have like 10 billion strings coming out of our minds at one point, with
Mhm.
half of those will be ideas and half of them will be like should you should be doing this. Oh, and by the way, you also need to do this and you need to do this, and how about doing this? Why are you not answering this email? Why are you not doing that? And it's sort of those things really do cloud us from actually doing the thing, whether that's
Mhm.
creating in the moment or whether that's doing something that's going to move the needle in your life some way, whether that's through your business or through the way you're sharing your work, or whether that's just kind of living in alignment with the way that you want to live. We're all kind of in this pursuit of creating that life where we get to um, create what as much as we want and really live in alignment with how we really desire to live, whatever that might look like for you. And how can we kind of tap into a bit of that now? There's that future version of you that's on the stage that has the gallery grand opening, or that has that small business that's really running for them, or is doing all these passion projects that allows their creativity to be fueled while still having everything else they want in life. Is that future version of you, are they the like showing up with this like scatterbrained approach to everything? Probably not. So to find ways to exercise that, I think is so needed, and I think it's so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely, for
Yeah.
sure. And as you said, there's no right way to do it, right? Like we all have like our own journey, but I think being authentic to where you are in your journey is just really important, right? It's being able to name for yourself like what matters to me, why does that matter? And then I'm going to carve out that time for myself to make it happen. It just having that being able to name it and say that why and how that connects with like what makes you authentically and uniquely you, like that is a gift that nobody else can give the world, right? And so it can take it from a moment of feeling, oh, I'm really selfish because I'm working on my art, and there's all these other things that need to happen, or all these people need something from me, or I should be, doing a business plan or whatever that is, right? And it takes you to that moment of going, this is something that's uniquely me that nobody else can do, right? And maybe I can delegate some of these other things. Maybe I can say no to some of these other things. Like, what are the things that I'm going to do? How am I going to make choices to allow that time to, share my gifts, right? And so I think it really, just changes the mindset that we enter things with, right? From it feels selfish to do this thing that I love, to doing this thing that I love is actually part of my gift to the world, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a journey, right? It took me a while to get there. But every time I sit down to create, every time I sit down to write, I just do it with this feeling or this knowledge that it matters, right? And it doesn't just matter to me, like it is something that contributes. And that's just really empowering. And there's a lot of stuff I have to say no to allow that time, right? But the people who love me, the people, who care about me, they understand those boundaries that I started putting up so that I can have that time, right? And yeah, it's definitely a journey. I'm not perfect in it, but I love the journey that I'm on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to know. Like, obviously, I have my own tips and tricks for this, but I'd love to know from your perspective, what helps bring out that kind of authentic answer to the question, what do I actually want here? Because I think so many creatives, we get kind of caught up in what we should want within our industry. You know, if you're a singer, you should want to be Adele, for example.
Mm,
Or
yeah.
if you're an actor, you should want to be in movies. Or if you're a painter, you should want XYZ. And I think that it's a really powerful moment when you think, actually, what do I want? Like, what would make me the most happy? Are there kind of things that you guide people through that you could share um, to
Mhm.
find that answer?
Absolutely. So, the first thing that I have people do is create a 10-year vision. And the 10-year vision, I don't want people just to focus on like, here's everything I want to accomplish, right? It is more of like, how do I want to feel through that, right? What do I want to be? What do I want to have? Not just in terms of material things, but in terms of relationships, right? Experiences. And so it's really getting clear through that 10-year vision process. Like, how do I want to show up in the world? But how do I also want to feel on that journey to get there? Right. And so having that 10-year vision, I think, is one of those things that it's just like it's a foundational practice that when you're then making choices around your time, right? When you're then kind of tuning in and going, okay, like, what is it I really want to focus on for the next 90 days, right? What do I want to accomplish? If those things can be linked back to your 10-year vision, then you're able to say yes or no, right? You're able to say, okay, that's something that actually takes me in the direction of my dreams, or that's something that actually is going to take energy away from this thing that I'm wanting to achieve. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Shakti Kawain, who does creative visualization. But she just has a really lovely framework for this. And so, when you're creating a vision, it is definitely something that can draw you in the direction of your dreams. But when you do it, it's really important not to hold super tight to that. And so some people can be like absolutely rigid in how they approach this, where I think of it as more aspirational, right? I think of it as like opening up the possibility to like, what do I authentically want? What excites me? Like you want to be able to feel that excitement and that energy and that passion, right? So if you create a 10-year vision and you don't feel that, you don't feel all that excitement, it's probably not your vision, right? It's something somebody else wants for you or you think you should do. And so when you create it, you want to be able to, you really feel that sense of excitement. You want to feel like this is real and this can happen, right? And feel that energy around it. And then what I absolutely love in the framework that Shakti Gawain does is each time you're kind of visualizing this and you're kind of using this like on a regular basis to really kind of ground yourself in where you're going, she encourages you to say at the end of it, this or something better for the
Yeah.
highest good of all concerned. And so what that does is, well, you have this vision and you have this direction, right? You've got this North Star that you're now, making your decisions around where you spend your time. You're not clinging so tight to it that you're not allowing other opportunities or spontaneous opportunities or other things to come up. And so it's agile, it's adaptable, but it is giving you a direction and giving you language, right, where you can then say, this matters not just to me, but this is actually is for the highest good of all concerned as this unfolds. So just love her work, and I've been doing using it for years, and I just find it incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more about that because I think that it's really important to have that authentic vision for yourself.
Hmm.
It's also maybe equally important to surrender the outcome. I think because otherwise we can kind of show up in the present day or show up now from this space of force, or like which underlying that is a state of like lack. I'm not good enough until I have this thing, or I will be saved
Mm-hmm.
when this happens. But if you kind of have to say like, yeah, this or something better is also a mantra I use a lot in loads of different areas. It's something you can take, people listening, on your career path, in your relationships, everything. You can take those words, this or something better, because it kind of puts you in this energetic state of, this is what I want, but what if? You
Mm-hmm.
never know what could come. And that that surrendering of the outcome is something also that's really deeply rooted within mindfulness and also yoga philosophies as well. This kind of idea of having a intention to grow towards something, but
Mm-hmm.
also not striving for that thing, or not being so attached to that outcome that your happiness depends on it.
Yeah. And you want to feel happy on the journey, right? Because now is the only moment we have, right? And so if you've created this vision for yourself that you feels like you have to strive, you have to push, you have to, sacrifice, right? We may or may not reach that vision, right? And so the time that we spend leading up to it, right? The time that we spend creating it, we want that to be enjoyable, right? We want that to be filled with gratitude and joy and pleasure. And so, it's a little bit of a balance, right? Because there's that shining star that you want to get to, but how you feel on the journey to get there is really the most important part, because that is what we have, right? We have this present moment. And so that's where the mindfulness piece, weaves back in, right? Because this is it. This is what we have. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what we have. Yeah, for sure. And just to kind of like, I'll tell a personal story to paint a picture of what this might look like for someone if they're thinking, no, I don't know if I know what feels exciting and what doesn't. When I was younger, I mean, a lot of people that are listening will know that I used to be a fashion designer, or I have a fashion design background. You never know if I'll pick it up again, but so I won't say used to. I remember I used to fully believe that if I was not the next Alexander McQueen, I would never be happy. That if I wasn't that, then I wouldn't be happy. And I don't want to sound morbid, but I remember the day that Alexander McQueen died was the day that planted the seed of like, oh, well, if he wasn't happy, maybe I won't be happy when I get to that London Fashion Week show, massive fashion house, big name in the industry. And it wasn't until like 2 years later, I think, that I was watching a movie that's a documentary about a fashion designer, a famous Savile Row tailor. And the documentary, I think it's called Running Man. It's about Oswald Boateng. And his life was so fast, and he had built this fashion house and he was doing really well. And I remember watching his life and kind of reflecting on myself. Is that life really the one that I want? And my whole body was like, no, that is the last thing that I want. He was spending no time with his children or with his wife. He didn't really have a life outside of what he was doing. He was so stressed. He was running from place to place all the time. And while I wanted to, have I suppose, the creative life that he had, that the cost of that just filled me with dread. So then from that space, I was like, okay, well, now what feels good in my body? What version of that life feels good in my body? So that for people listening, that you could do something like that, watch something about, or look at somebody that you really admire, really look at their life for actually what it is, not for the success they've had or for the accolades that they've collected, but the way that they're living day to day, and really ask yourself, is that what I want? And for some of you, it'll be like a full body, absolutely yes. And for some of you, it might be something different. And I think that's really honoring that is the best thing that you could possibly do on this journey, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. um, And I would love to know, kind of going into your work within productivity a bit further. So you kind of start with this vision. The other kind of steps along the way, you don't have to share them all, but did they come from your like work outside of this, or were they something you just kind of created by trying to do everything that you're doing now?
Yeah, so I'd say they were very heavily influenced by my professional work. So I work in human resources, And I work for a large company that's going through an agile transformation. And so I've had a lot of opportunity to kind of work with an agile methodology. And for anyone who's not familiar with that, part of what you do is you plan in 90-day sprints. And so I've taken that and I've kind of integrated that into what I'm doing. Because I think, first of all, you have that vision and then you have to take action on it, right? And so if you can take that vision and, translate that into objectives that are, really clear, right? And then make choices to kind of prioritize like just a few of those for like the next 90 days. What that does is it gives you a structure or a way of saying, it doesn't mean I'm not going to get to all those other things, right? But for this set time period, this is going to be, my absolute primary focus. And what that allows you to do is then make tremendous progress on what it is that you're focusing on for those 90 days. So that you can, get that momentum, you can see those results, you can celebrate your successes, right? And as part of that, like I think it's really helpful to kind of define like what does that end line game look like, right? And so how will I know if I've set out what I've to do, what I wanted to do in those 90 days, right? What can I celebrate? What can I keep my energy and momentum building for because I feel good about what I've done, right? Versus feeling like maybe we've never done enough, right? And so over time, like if you're kind of, planning in like 90-day increments, what happens is you get better at starting to estimate like what's realistic to do in that time. And so that you're not sitting there beating yourself up, right? You're not being
Yeah.
judgmental about all those other things that you could have done, right? And so you come into it making like really intentional choices, having a very clear focus, clear measurements of success, right? To be able to say, yeah, like I can celebrate that I did that. I can feel good that I did that, right? And then, you kind of plan the next 90-day cycle. And so that is something that, a lot of businesses are doing. But I think on an individual level, it really has value, right? Because you can't do it all. You have to make choices. And so just getting really clear in that and what those choices are, and then be able to celebrate those successes is just so motivating. And yeah, I don't know about you, but I find like with myself, it's like I have this really long to-do list sometimes, and it's just so easy to beat myself up and go, I didn't do this and this and this and this, right? But this type of structure just changes all that to be able to go, okay, I'm going to celebrate and appreciate what I did do. If I didn't do it, I'm going to learn from it, right? I'm going to have that growth mindset around it. And I'm going to then be able to kind of plan better for the next 90 days. And so I'd say all of that is definitely heavily influenced by the work that I do and the environment I'm in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good kind of, what's the word? Practice to take from that corporate environment and kind of transfer it more towards a like softer, more mindful, creative mind. It's really impactful practice for sure. Do you have any, I suppose, experience and or advice around being really disciplined? I'm going to use that word discipline. Some people find it a bit hard, but disciplined around just doing what you're saying you're going to do in those 90 days and without getting distracted, because we can kind of have shiny object syndrome a little bit of like, okay, I put all these things on a piece of paper, we'll feel really good that day that we did that, and then after that like get distracted by something else and forget about it. Do you have like
Yeah.
discipline techniques that you use to really anchor that in?
I do, I do. So this is where journaling comes in for me in part. So we can talk about that. But I think that just having kind of like a set kind of ritual or pattern of like every day I review like that, 10-year vision, make sure I'm still aligned, remember my big whys, right? Get excited about it. Every day I take a moment to kind of reflect at the end of the day with journaling to say like, what did I do? How did it go? How am I feeling about it, right? And so that kind of like anchor point, right, at the end of the day to do that reflection. Just if I can stay consistent in that, I may not can stay consistent in everything, right? But if I can kind of have like this, those two major anchor points, right, of reading the 10-year vision, visualizing it, doing my reflection at the end of the day, Then if I need to self-correct somewhere in there because, I've gotten distracted, I haven't made the time, I've been pulled in other directions, I'm not staying true to what I've committed to myself, then, through journaling, through that reflection at the end of the day, I can A, become aware of that, right? And name it. But B, I can kind of be easy on myself in terms of how I correct, right? So, okay, I noticed this. Here's the places where I'm getting off track, right? Here's how I want to approach that tomorrow so I don't get off track, right? And then if I notice there's a pattern where like day after day, boy, I'm allowing myself to get off track, right? I'm not doing what I set out to do. There's the reality check time, right? To go, okay, what's off, right? Because if I truly am excited by this, if I really want to create this, then what's stopping me, right? And so is it a limiting belief that's popping up, right? Is it something where I need support? Is it something where maybe, I say I want to do it, but it's not actually what I want to do, right? And so
Yeah.
it's time to recalibrate. And so there's just kind of lots of different ways to approach it, but if you notice that pattern over and over, I think it's really important not to sit there and beat yourself up, but to tune in, right? And to check in and to be open to the answers that come in terms of, why it is that you're struggling to make progress. I will say, like, I think where it's really tough for people is some people want like a whole roadmap, right? And
Yeah.
I don't think we get that in life. So just focusing on figuring out the next step, getting really clear in what the next step is, that is, I think, what kind of takes you from that place of feeling stuck to then, acting on things, right? So if it's something you really truly still care about, but the struggle is you don't know what to do, right? And is that lack of clarity. That is usually where people will get stuck, right? And so being able to kind of step back, be through journaling or through meditation or through, bouncing ideas off of friends or a community of support, whatever that is that's going to get you unstuck, being able to kind of just name, here's the next step. And then taking that next step, right? That leap of faith, right? And if it's the wrong thing, then you pivot, right? You learn from it. You try something different. But, you can get so stuck in trying to have a full plan when really, just taking the next step, you're going to learn something from it. And then you're going to be able to, to see momentum. And so those would be my tips, for anybody that's like, they're spending more time thinking about what they want to do than actually doing it, is, to just shake that up and change that space. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really, really great advice. And I think also things like being really compassionate about when you haven't maybe done what you said you want to do
Mhm.
really is exercised through mindfulness. I mean, you can do it in other ways, but the way that I really discovered the whole self-compassion thing probably was through mindfulness, and it's really something to exercise along the whole way because we can be so unbelievably hard on ourselves, like our own biggest critic. We can worry
Yeah.
all day long about people not liking us or not liking our work, but no one's ever going to say anything worse than you probably say to yourself as a creative, I think.
Yeah, and you're right. Like that's one of the aspects of mindfulness I love the most is that non-judgmental self-awareness and being able to like, have that compassion for yourself that you would have for a friend, right? And then, being able to, start reframing how you speak to yourself, right? The messages that you give to yourself. Think about how what you would say to a friend, right? And so, non-judgmental awareness and compassion is like, bedrock for I think having a joyful life. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, just while you were speaking there, I was thinking about how often when we're kind of on a path to pursuing our creative life, often we are told to pick like one channel for that to come through. Whereas you have many different things that you do and you're spinning many plates, but doing it all in a very peaceful way. um, I'd love to kind of know, have you always kind of been very, I don't like the term particularly, but like multi-hyphenate or disciplinary with your art? Did you try and kind of do one thing, or did you just follow the intuition or follow the inspiration?
I'm very intuitive, so I really follow my intuition. When I talk about doing mandalas for 30 years, I've changed my mediums multiple times, right? And so I've done watercolor, I've done India ink, I've done black paper with white pencil crayon, right? And so being able to, I don't think that we have to be kind of imposing limits, right, on our creativity. I think being really open to and allowing it to kind of change and flow and following your intuition and following your passion, there's a place for that, right? And it keeps things fresh, it keeps things interesting. So always I've tried to, you know, not look at things like an isolated pillars, right? But to kind of look for interconnection and how things can kind of fit together.
Yeah, totally. I think that sometimes I think again, it's one of those things that I say a lot, that there's never one size fits all. There's not going to be one thing that's right for everybody. Some people will really need to do one thing well, and some people will need to do multiple things, because I think sometimes when we have too much pressure on that one thing, again, it kills the fun and kills the playfulness and kills the creativity. So sometimes having more of an ecosystem of different things that you're doing keeps it fresh, as you say. It kind of keeps it fun, and it keeps that pressure off, I suppose. What started to draw you from the mandalas to start to write books?
Yeah, so actually art was the tie-in. So the first two books I did were both for my son, and they were watercolor books that I did. Just one of them was it's called You Can Be, and so it's like all the possibilities of all the things that we can be. And so originally it was like a way of kind of doing both the writing and the art together. And then as I said, I kind of very intuitive in how I flow, but I started getting more and more into the writing side of things. It was just the journaling in particular, I found just such a helpful practice. And I wanted to have a way of sharing that with others, right? And so a lot of my energy recently has gone into the writing because that's something that that's where I'm feeling my passion, that's where I'm feeling my creativity, and it's what's bringing me joy, right? And so it's not that I would drop doing the other parts of it, but I feel like they kind of flowed together as a journey. And that using my larger voice right now really kind of comes out in the writing.
Yeah, I love that. That kind of come together and influence each other. When you were kind of starting to put your books out into the world, I mean, you might have experienced this with the mandala as well, but I think often when you've got your name stamped on something like a book, it can come with a lot of fear. um, can you remember that time of like pressing publish on like the first book and how that felt? Were there fears, or were there kind of feelings of being held back doing that?
I wouldn't say it was a feeling of fear, but it was a feeling of newness, right? It was just like, it's like I'm dabbling in something that's new for me, right? And we'll see how this evolves. And then I think this is where kind of the building your skills comes in, right? And so, being able to do that is like it gave me a little bit of a peek into what could be, right? But then to get more serious about publishing, right, to get to truly make this like a passion project, I needed to hone my skills, I needed to learn things. So tons of reading, courses, just different ideas around like how to really maximize the results of this, right? And so I think that sometimes our passion can kind of take us into a direction, but then once you've dabbled in it, you realize, oh, this is like so much that I don't know, right? That I really want to now, develop, right? And so lots of different skills that I've developed through doing that. For example, being on podcasts, right? That was something that was really new for me, but I realized, if you don't share your story, right, you're not able to sell your work, right? And so, if you think about marketing, sales, like a whole bunch of different aspects I wouldn't have thought of, that really you need to be successful if you want to sell your work as an author, right? And so, I don't want to describe it as a fear, but kind of like baby steps, right? Being a newbie. And I described like just taking that next step and then going, oh, okay, now I need to learn this. Okay, take the next step. Now I need to learn this, right? And I just think that openness and that attitude, like it removes some of that fear and it makes it a more enjoyable process, right? So I don't have to get it all right coming out of the gates. I've got that cushion, right, of the full-time professional job that I still
Yeah.
have, which not everybody, has that same cushion, but it allows me to learn and grow over time versus, having tons of pressure to get it all right, right out the gate. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of us, we put that pressure on ourselves, whether we have the backup or not. That's like we've got, if we're gonna do it, we've got to get it right first time. Or as well, I see so many people get stuck of, well, I don't think I can make a living from what I want to do because I don't know how to market. And it's like, well, yeah, you didn't know how to paint before, or you didn't know how to do this before. And it's just a skill that we kind of have to exercise. And I think that you do have to start kind of embrace that you will get things wrong. And that's kind of the point. Within marketing, we learn, things that work, things that don't work, and kind of tailor what we're doing to the things that are working maybe a bit more. And yeah, I think it's a really important mindset to have, to be open to that journey of learning. And that it's not as much of an ick as we think it is. Like so many creators are like, oh no, I don't want to put myself out there because it's a bit cringe, or because, it's going to make me look XYZ. But actually, no, if you have that desire to share your work, or have that desire to put your work out there in whatever capacity that is, you have to embrace that uncomfortable thing and do the learning.
Yeah. And it's an iterative process, right? Like, it's that idea that we have to be perfect right off the bat, like I think that can be really paralyzing, really crippling, versus being able to do that mindset shift to go, okay, I'm going to try that. I'm going to learn from it, right? I'm going to take lessons from that. And then I'm going to, improve, right? And, just like any great art form, right? Anything that we approach, right? It's like you hone your skills over time, right? You don't start off just knowing it all or having all the answers. Like you build and you grow. And that's where that growth mindset or that agile approach comes in to say, this is an iterative process. I'm going to learn every time I do something. And every time I put myself out there, I'm going to learn something new and maybe gain some more confidence. So this is where I just love the metaphor is like it's a journey, right? It's not always about like that end result. It's also about how we feel as we're doing it.
Yeah, and like how much more growth can come from something that you do find uncomfortable. And I think that that's,
Mhm.
again, for me anyway, somewhere that mindfulness has really come in to play, because mindfulness kind of teaches you to tap into a feeling of being enough, like as you are already. Whereas I think sometimes what holds people back from doing those things is feeling like that getting something wrong or failing at something will mean something about you, or mean
Mm.
something about your talent, or mean something about your work. If people don't like what you put out, it means something. They take it really personally. It means something about you. I think for me, mindfulness or mindfulness based tools anyway have really kind of unearthed this feeling of like, actually, do you know what, if I put something out there and people don't like it, it doesn't mean anything about me.
Yeah.
And like nothing at all. And I think that having something that you can do to tap into that feeling is really like the one of the most vital things you can do, especially if you're out here doing it all on your own. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. I guess the last thing I'd love to kind of leave people with is, maybe could you share something that you found like the most pivotal thing on your journey that's kind of taken you maybe to feeling more harmonious or more peaceful within your creative process, or giving you the courage to kind of put it out there somehow, either or both.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna kind of it ties into all of this, but it is really has to do with kind of like the body and calming the nervous system. And so what I do for myself is something called emotional freedom technique. It's tapping exercises, so EFT. And I love this so much. I actually went out and became a certified practitioner because I just find it, such a great way of getting out of your head and like calming your nervous system. And so, what I will do for myself if I'm feeling stuck, I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling scared, or I've identified a limiting belief, there's something that I'm coming up against, right? What I will do is I will tap through like the meridian points in the body, just really kind of, calming my nervous system, and creating a sense of space, to be able to approach things in a different and new and creative way. And so that is a technique I absolutely love. And something that I've integrated, on a regular basis into my day. So I disguise, those other anchor points that I have. ETF tapping is another one of them for me. It's like just one of those practices that, honestly, it takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but it makes such a huge difference in my day.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for that. Everyone go and find some videos on EFT. I've definitely tried it myself, and for sure I feel that, especially when you are kind of present with a limiting belief, to kind of tap your way out of it is really, really a powerful like state shift in quite a quick space of time, which is really,
Yeah.
really vital when you're trying to do the hard things, for sure. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. I'll of course leave the links in the show notes for everyone to find you, but if people are ready to follow you right away, where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. I started up a group recently, which is the Mindful Productivity Community. So everybody is welcome to join there. My website is passionpurpose dot today. And so on there, you'll find my book. You'll also find some courses that I've developed. And so I'd say LinkedIn and my website is definitely the best way to reach me.
Okay, amazing. Well, I'll leave those links below, everyone. And thank you again so much for coming on the show. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Wonderful. Thanks for a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Maverick Mind. I hope that you've loved it, and if you have, I would appreciate it so much if you would subscribe and write a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to this podcast from. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, I invite you to join me over on Instagram at maverickmindco or on my website maverickmind.elliefoden.com. And I'll see you in another podcast very, very soon.